Hiya. Welcome back along to the long-awaited third part of the Brown Inferno live blog, and we're looking to do today chapters 15 through 22, which takes us right up to page 98. Obviously, first of all, apologies for the delay in getting up this second part. I have been very busy, unfortunately, of late, which has not been the best time, but it hasn't, unfortunately, left much room for reading, and certainly not reading such utter bilge as this. So, where we left off last time, we've just left Robert Langdon and Dr. Sienna in her front room, and they just created this codex in which they projected onto a wall, and they can now see that it is a copy of Botticelli's vision of the Inferno. And they investigate this projection, and they go through some utterly pointless stuff about various ditches and things in hell, and who is in each of these things, and they realise there are certain sections of the map which have been amended to now include letters which weren't there in the original. And they didn't really understand exactly what these letters mean. The combination doesn't mean anything to either of them, but they obviously realise that they've been put there for a reason. But before you know it, suddenly the army is on their tail again, and they have to escape, and off they pop onto a trike, and they go cycling around looking for various bits of Florence. In the meantime, we hear a bit of backstory about what happened on this boat, and why suddenly we think that they are trying to capture Robert Langdon and this codex. We learn that our chap who had the boat had an important client who wanted to disappear for a while. And after having disappeared, he set up a meeting with the boat chap and says that he has a very important object that he has left in a safety deposit box, and on his death he would like a video uploaded into the world, and this object to be given to the silver-haired woman who apparently haunts his dreams, and indeed is haunting Robert Langdon's dreams, it seems. This is a very typical Dan Brown device, which basically means that anyone of any significance in a story has to either be Robert Langdon or an attractive female. They tend to always be in that way. But unfortunately, when they've gone following the client's death, they've gone to open up the deposit box, and whatever it is that's inside it has been taken. But obviously it doesn't take a genius to work out. Presumably what was inside that deposit box is the codex that Langdon now has, and has worked out that it projects an image of Dante's Inferno, and whatever the heck that means. So, we've got this company who are now in pursuit of Langdon to try and reclaim their codex. We've got, for some reason, the US government, again, also wants to take out Langdon. And we have Langdon and Dr. Sienna, who are now off on their trike looking for the old city. And they arrive at the old city, and they have to try and devise some intelligent way of getting inside, because there is an army roadblock in place that presumably is there to try and capture Langdon. Now, we still don't quite understand exactly what it is which has made Langdon worth so much to this government and this army that they have spent so much money trying to kill him, when we still don't really understand exactly what it is. But presumably, as with the lost symbol, they will spend the entire story for no decent reason trying to kill him, and then when they do capture him, they'll just mess it up. But so you've got Langdon and Dr. Sienna, who are now at the gates of the old city, and with the help of a bunch of students, they sneak inside, and they're off to try and crack the puzzle of letters, because Langdon now believes he understands what the letters mean, and therefore he knows where he has to go to try and find the next clue. It's pretty standard Dan Brown affair. I mean, I'd say it's certainly not the level of Da Vinci Code, Angels and Demons kind of irritation to me just yet. He certainly isn't making as many glaring errors. I'm sure there are plenty of errors in there. An awful lot of what he's talking about is Michelangelo, who I'm not an expert on. But he's doing one of the really, really annoying traits you get in a Dan Brown book, which is at some point in every single Dan Brown story, you get a flashback to Robert Langdon delivering a lecture of some kind. And I mean, I'm not sure whether or not he's meant to try to portray Langdon as being some kind of inspirational speaker, but essentially Langdon couldn't be anything worse of a speaker, because the audiences that Dan Brown creates are so far south of what actually truly exists. Nobody in the entire world goes into lectures and swoons and goes, ooh! Like, it doesn't happen. There's nothing happens. Obviously, if you go to a lecture, you must have some idea in advance of what it's going to be about. And these people are coming to a lecture on Dante, and supposedly they are shocked by the images of Dante's Inferno and all the unpleasant things that happen in there. Now, I would suggest Dante's Inferno is a pretty niche subject. I think if you've come to attend an entire evening of a lecture about Dante's Inferno, you might have some idea of exactly what goes on in there. And even if you hadn't, I think you know full well it's about hell, and hell is not exactly supposed to be a pleasant place. But the way he constructs his things, and I mean, the worst one he ever did was, I think it was in Da Vinci Code, where he had a flashback to a student seminar he was doing on the Greek number phi, and what these various constants mean, and how phi controls our very, very lives. And at one point he has Robert Langdon talking to his class and saying, "You'll never guess what this adds up to." And one of the students goes, "Oh, not phi!" It's that kind of thing. It's so poorly written. It's not realistic. The problem is, this is what really tends to grind and grate on me whenever I read a Dan Brown novel, is that, okay, his plots are absolutely ridiculous. His facts are completely untrue. But there is no reason why you have to write so incredibly badly. I mean, it's the kind of writing of somebody who's never really seen a genuine human interaction. I mean, the worst things he writes are when he has his adults trying to interact with the youth, because he writes like somebody who's never spoken to a young person in their entire life, because things he writes, I mean, for example, at one point, just as we get to the end of chapter 21, he has Dr. Sienna and Dr. Langdon have now snuck inside Florence, and they're in the old city, and they have to try and get into a garden. And unfortunately, the entrance to the garden, to get there, is quite heavily guarded. So they're trying to get these students to tell them where the entrance is. So they ask, where is the entrance to the gardens? And the students say, oh no, it's all the way around there, you have to go past the guards. Now, Dan Brown, then, I mean, where are we? He first of all, has Dr. Sienna shouting bullshit. And then he has her, "Come on," she said, smirking coyly at the students as she stroked her blonde ponytail. "You're telling me that you guys don't sneak into the gardens to smoke weed and fool around?" The kids all exchanged looks and then burst out laughing. The guy with tattoos now looked utterly smitten. "Mom, you'd totally teach here." Now, I would suggest that nobody in their entire life has held such a conversation. Certainly no cool young student in their entire life is going to be impressed by someone saying things like, "You must go there to smoke weed and make out." It's so poorly written in terms of what he actually thinks young people sound like. And this is the whole problem I have with his writing, is that, quite apart from the fact that he completely makes up things and claims they're facts, Quite apart from the fact that his plots make absolutely no sense whatsoever. It's his dialogue. It's so poorly written because it's so completely. It rings so hollow and so false. And this is why we don't really like, for me anyway, the Dan Brown way of writing. Because if you read a lot, you'll see really great authors who truly understand what a dialogue sounds like. And Dan Brown just doesn't seem able to get that. He can't comprehend what a genuine sounding dialogue should sound like. And instead you get things like that, which are so stilted and sound so completely untrue, that it's quite clear that he knows at this point in time where his plot has to go. His plot has to somehow get Langdon and Dr. Sienna into the gardens without going past the guards. He seems to not really care how they get there, other than let's create a really, really convenient plot point in which we suggest that kids are going to be impressed by the fact that you can use phrases like smoking weed and making out. It's really, really poorly done. And the point is that it's got to go from A to B. But there's no reason why you can't make the route from A to B plausible, or at least have a dialogue which in some way, suggests that it could be actual, genuine dialogue being really said, as opposed to what this sounds like, which is total crap. So, I'm not massively impressed so far. We are only 100 pages in, and, it could get better. I mean, at least in this 50-odd pages, he hasn't made any, from what I can tell, made any outright lies just yet. I mean, I'll probably go and check up on his references to Michelangelo and his veneration of Dante. I mean, I do know Michelangelo was a huge fan of Dante. Whether or not the things that, as usual with Dan Brown, he has to have people quoting people constantly and then explaining where the reference is. So it would be like me coming up with some obscure quote now within this and then having to go off and explain it. If you're going to use a quote, you shouldn't need to explain it to your audience. It should be well enough known. And the fact is that the way Dan Brown tries to write things is that he'll have Robert Langdon quoting something to Dr. Sienna, and both of them understand the quote, supposedly, but obviously Dan Brown knows his audience won't know it, and so for some reason you have to have this bizarre inner monologue in which somebody has to quantify and explain what the person has just said to them and what it means. It's absolutely stupid. So I'm hoping it improves, but I've not got massively high hopes, and I'll speak to you in another 50 or so pages. See you soon.